Okay, it's like any non-Polish speaking guy in the class. Anyone? Czyli wszyscy mówimy po polsku. You. Okay, then we do that in English for you. Okay, so my name is Grzegorz Moskal. I'm a software developer in TYPESCRIPT company, and I had this honor to finish that university, computer science on that university. I think it was 10 years ago already or something like that. And since that time, I used to work in several different technologies on the backend side, on the frontend side, including C++, C#, and Haskell even. And then for the last 5 years, I do front-end development. And the topic of this presentation, it is TypeScript, React, and Redux. Why use static types in JavaScript? Will it make you a better person? So yesterday we talked after the first part of this conference with the guys from the company, and we were thinking what makes the good presentation. I mean, what is the trigger of the presentation? Like, what makes a presentation like really good? And what they said, it is that after coming back from the presentation, you really want to start coding. I mean, if it is about coding or programming. So I'm not sure if I can make you like JavaScript, TypeScript, but probably I can share some experience with you. And the second part, will it make you a better person? Probably it got nothing to do with the TypeScript and the stuff. It is just some random sentence over there. So, yes. So how it really works. People try to complicate things, but look how it works. What backend really does is changing one JSON to another, and what frontend really does is changing JSON to form and form to JSON. This is the sentence that a colleague of mine said in the kitchen recently, like it was 2 weeks ago or something. And he asked me what I'm doing right now, and I said, actually, I'm just creating a form in a web application for my new client in the TYPESCRIPT. And I'm like really creating a form because I get to send some data and the stuff. So I was obviously using some different technologies that I used to use like 20 years ago or something, but it was kind of similar. And you can agree or disagree with that statement. That I mean, it makes me laugh. But what backend really does, it is that we are changing the data into another, and we are just computing something and sending back to the front end if we got some front end. And what front end really does is just collecting the information from the user or displaying the data in a different ways and sending back to the backend. Yeah. So this is how, I mean, this is kind of overlook on the. And by the way, the Krzysiek who said so, he's a Clojure script developer, so maybe that's how they think about the backend and frontend. And so if it is like that, I mean, by the way, the plan for the presentation is that I'm going through the history of the forms, and then we go for live coding, because probably that's most inspiring. But I got this part prepared about the history of the web forms, so I got to go through that. So. How was it? So in the beginning, in the 90s, they introduced something what was called HTML forms, and it was hard. I mean, how it works, it was very similar to what we get today. We got this form input, and I mean, we got this form tag. We had some inputs, and then when you click submit, we were sending some data to the backend, and then the backend was in charge of taking care of the data that was submitting over there. So if the data was validated, I mean, if it was correct, then I was redirected, or we were redirected to some other page. If it wasn't, then whole page got to be re-rendered. So that was the beginning of the 90s. Then the JavaScript was introduced, and it allowed us to do client-side validation. That was a pretty big step already. that we could validate data on the client side, but the syntax was terrible. Especially if I'm not sure if you remember that those times, but I still do. The radio buttons that you had to like iterate through that was like terrible stuff. So that was JavaScript. So lots of library were fighting for the attention to make that work with the forms easier, and the winner of that is jQuery, that probably everybody heard of. And on the same time, Ajax was introduced, and Ajax is, I mean, this is how we do the API calls in the background. And the problem with that was that the data still was kept on the DOM side. I mean, that was the place where was the data present in the. It was not in the JavaScript. It was still on the DOM. So you get to iterate through all those funny inputs, and then you get to take the data out to send it back to the backend, right? And so the next invention was important step in abstracting the form data away from the DOM, and that was two-way data binding. And several frameworks use that concept, and probably most popular of them is Angular, that probably some are familiar with. And how was it? It was just like some attribute that you put on the tag, and it is like ng model as far as I remember. And so you put ng model, and it was synchronizing the object of the JavaScript and the DOM, and that was somehow binded with that model that was somewhere behind, right? So that was it. After that, there was a small library introduced. It was called React, that probably like everybody heard about. And what's different about the React is that we got no two-way data binding over there. And what it really does, it takes control away from the DOM, and we are not. I mean, we know where the data really lives nowadays if we use React. That's obviously true. And in React, we got something that is called controlled input. So controlled input is each input that got value that is binded to any state data. So if you don't put this value over there, then this is uncontrolled input, which the guys who created this React, they do not recommend to use, but you can still use it if you want to like do some jQuery over there or something like that. So that was how it changes through time. This is a nice timeline over there. And what was next? The way how do they manage the state in the React? Actually, the guys who stand behind the React library, they introduced this flow of flex. How is it flex, right? No, this flow of flex. Flex, yeah. And actually, that was just a paradigm. I mean, they introduced how it's supposed to work, but there was no implementation behind it. So there was like a lot of the implementation who was like fighting for the attention again, like with the jQuery in the middle of the 90s. And the one who won was Redux. And Redux, you know what's Redux? Because already we had a wonderful presentation about that, but I got animation. And it is pretty simple. I mean, if you look at the Redux, it is nothing more than just a gigantic or like huge, big global variable. It's nothing else. And the way how you change this variable, the part of that variable, then they introduce some funny names for that, like actions, reducers, and stuff. But it's nothing more than just a global variable with the global state of the application. This is how it works. Yeah, so nothing complicated so far, right? So this is React, and this is probably why I like React, because this is pretty simple and easy library that got slightly different approach than those Angular on Vue frameworks that try to embed HTML templates with some extra syntax. That what the guys from the React design, they decide to, let's say, swallow the syntax of the HTML. Then you can render that stuff. Okay, let's go through those things about the Redux. You got a single store. The state is read-only. You can update the state via actions, and actions are just simple objects. So action is nothing complicated. State is mutated functionally via reducers, map reducers. So we'll all love it. And subscribers are notified only about the changes in their slice of the state. So this is it. This is Redux. This is how it was designed. Live coding. What is because that was about Redux. Then we got TypeScript. I started to use TypeScript like on the very beginning of the development stage of the language. So it was, I think it was 2012 or something like that. I think 2012 October it was released for the first time. So I started to use it all on the very beginning, and I was just very curious how they try to introduce those types into the JavaScript, because I always miss that. Because if you think about the data, you always think about the types. At least if you finish that university. So this is what they try to do. So TypeScript is nothing else than a superset of the JavaScript. So if you got any code that is in JavaScript, this is already in TypeScript, but you can put something on top. I mean, you can put some types over there and the stuff, and it makes your life much easier, I would say. So what is nice about the TypeScript as well is that if you let the compiler play for you or work for you, then you got code refactoring for free. You got type checking for free. So if you call any function that is that requires a different arguments or different order of arguments or something like that, then you got worried about that, or you even cannot compile it. What it does, there is this really huge repository which is called Definitely Typed. I'm not sure if you heard about that, but the thing is that JavaScript, it got a big amount of libraries already. So if you want to use them, and if you want to use them in TypeScript, that would be pretty nice to have all those types defining the type decorators for all the functions or the classes that are declared over there. So it is, if you want to use jQuery, for example, in TypeScript, you can easily do that. You can just install this. Nowadays it's pretty easy. It used to be much more complicated because on the very beginning you had to just clone that repository and put those guys into your repository, and then you got to track the version. Then there was this TSD typing and other tools that were introduced. But nowadays the guys from NPM, they introduce a separate repository which starts from ape types. So whatever ape types, whatever /whatever, then it's gonna probably contain the types definition for your library. So pretty easy. So is it worth of trying? The technology is a word that describes something that doesn't work yet. This is Douglas Adams' famous quotation. I love it. I want to show you why I use it and why it is worth of giving a try, in my opinion. Okay, let me mirror the display that I know what I'm typing. Technology. Mirror display. Good. Okay. So where you see something? No, it's too small. Now you see something? Is it good? I mean, is it big enough, or you want me to make it bigger? I mean, then I don't see anything. Like an interaction, that's cool. Okay, so, and by the way, that's the boilerplate that it is published on Tuplux's GitHub under grill.ts name. So, how it works? Okay, my touchpad is not responding anymore. I got some idea. Maybe I'm sitting on the mouse that is here. Yeah, that was it. Anyways, so actually, this is where everything starts. Boilerplating for all those React stuff around. I mean, this Redux, Webpack, and all the stuff. It can take you hours and hours, but we will not go through that. That's why I'm using boilerplate here. We are ready to go. So let's say we want to say hello. Where are we? We are hello EE. Yep, we got it. So what is happening here? First of all, the React is imported. This is TSX. TSX, it means this is something like JSX in normal React application, but this is support for React for TypeScript, right? So we got this, all those things, all those tags that can be used from the React, the standard HTML stuff that was written by the React guys. So nothing special, right? We got this hello II, which means Institut Informatyki. And if we create a new guy over here, let's call it super title, and we import as React from React. So anything that is component in React world. I mean, component is anything that got this stateless component is anything that got this render function. So if we export something like export const, let's call it super title then, and let's say it got props, and let's say the props needs a title, which is type of string, and let's say this is h1. And here we got props, and we got title. Okay, one thing. We got those props here, and if I press dot over there, then because of the type annotation that is on the, by the way, this is after the semicolon, you got a type annotation. So this is kind of interface or the type, so you can extract it. So you can say something like iProps, and you can define this type, iProps here. Yeah. So anything that is defined on that type can be used here, right? So props title, pretty cool. And if you want to use that guy here in the application, so we just need to import this super title from this is some funny plugin that already did the job for me. That's cool. So, and with this we can now say super title, and the title is hello EE. Nothing new, right? Okay, so let's say that super title and the title props, it is not what we really want to have because it is somehow both titled, so it doesn't sound pretty cool. So let's rename the guy. So let's rename it to text. We got it. Is it compiled? It's cool. We didn't change it in the app container, and it was refactored by the IDE because of using TypeScript and because of using the compiler. So let's say we got those guys. I mean, a lot of those guys are in a lot of places all around the project. And if we want to refactor something, this is where was the super title? Yeah, it's here. Then it is pretty easy to do that. Yeah, just to rename the guy. Okay, you can right-click on that, and you can say rename symbol, and you can say text to, and it is already cool. Oh, should recompile it again. Yeah, we got it. So that's one thing that is refactoring. The second thing is that if we go to that guy, okay, let's remove a part of them. So if we go to that guy and let's say we want to pass this text because we are not aware that something has changed here, then it is highlighted, and we see that property text2 is missing, and it means that we get to pass text2, not the text. Yeah. So if we change it, then compiler is happy. So that's the second thing. So it is type checking of our own components. Yeah. So how much time do I have? It's already. Yeah, I can go through some. Okay. So probably the next thing that we want, because this is one thing that you use React and you use all those typed properties to be sure that you are passing a good things over there. But let's say that let's skip the React for the sec, and let's go through some pure JavaScript code, so pure TypeScript code, and we got this famous jQuery here. So what I just imported jQuery, and I used some Ajax call here, and if you just press the dot on this dollar symbol, then you got all those guys that are defined on this jQuery guy, and this is in the project. I mean, and the compiler knows about the types definition because it was installed previously. I mean, I did it before the presentation. You can check the Git history, and the dependencies here. It is types jQuery, and jQuery is installed here as well. So if you really want to install something new, this is what I said before, right? Then you can just say npm install, and you got this jQuery. But if you want to install the types, then you can say types jQuery. Yeah, and this is where the definition comes from. And we can take a look at the types definition, obviously. A lot of stuff installed here as well, but yeah. Like nothing like really complicated. I mean, this is just the type annotation for all those things that we already know from jQuery, right? But if something doesn't, yeah, the problem that can appear to that is that with some packages, that could be like two different persons who play with the type definition and who play with the package. itself. So it means that if it's not in the same repository, or at least it's not the same guy who's doing, or the same team who's doing the thing, then they can desynchronize, and this is pretty tough. So the new trend of doing that is that they at least use the same versioning system. This is already, I mean, it was not obvious for them since the very beginning. I mean, they invented like a different versioning for the type package and the package itself. So you got like really confused while trying to find out if it's a correct version or not. But the newest trend is that for all those, let's say, serious libraries, they already got the types definition included into the project itself. So, but sometimes it happens that it is not included, and then we got to install those types. Yeah. So where we go next? I already touched TypeScript, I already touched React, so probably this Redux is something that left over there. So I talked already about the theory of Redux, but how it looks in real life. So this is how it looks. Actually, this is how it looks. This is okay. The thing about the action that I didn't like since the very beginning was that if you are passing an action and this is just an object and it is not a typed object, then if you try to write this reducer, and it can be like complicated in some cases, then you got no idea what payload it is in that action. What is like the real type of the payload? So there were several approaches on the web how to solve that thing. I mean, how to like really guess or ensure the type of the action. And there is one package that was, I mean, was simplified by us. I mean, in Tuplux, this is Redux TypeScript actions, and that's actions created factory that we simplified. And this is also in that repository. You can use it. Don't look at this code if you don't have to. I mean, maybe it can be funny for you to read how you can really play with the types in the TypeScript. But if you want to use it, then it is like pretty simple. We got this action creator factory with the prefix, and then you can create that. You can create action via that, and then you got also this equal function. And here in action, we know that the payload in that case, it is on string. So if let's say we create another action, set version 2, I'm very creative. And let's say we got a full string, creative as well. And let's go to set version 2, and we need a comma here. And then, if we say that the action is the guy, so now it says that the payload it is of type full string, not just the string, because that's the action factory, action creator factory. This is something that returns you on like certain action with that type. By the way, this is generic. This is what in JavaScript and in C# they call it generic. So, and that's the type of the payload. And this equal, this is like pretty simple function. And on the end of that function, I mean the result of that function, it says that the action that was passed is that very type. So it infers the type of the action, and you can really use it in a safe way. So you cannot just pass something different to the version in the state, because you are using like strongly typed actions here. So you are safe on the compiling time. That's I say this is like a big advantage for, I mean, at least for us, if we got like several actions, I mean, even plenty of actions in the project, and sometimes different people are creating an action and then changing the payload, and if it stops compiling, then it means that something is happening in a wrong way somewhere in the project, right? And if you got just a pure vanilla JavaScript or whatever, then you got no safety at all. I mean, you can just pass whatever you want here, right? So that's why we use it. I mean, that's why we use typed actions. Let's remove that guy. What else? What else I can show you? There is a bunch of good libraries to Redux. One of them that I really love is Redux form, because I'm a fan of the forms already. I showed you. And the Redux form, if you're not familiar with that, I'm like, you can take a look on it. It's pretty funny. I mean, you don't have to take care about any interaction on the inputs. It does it by itself. What else? Except this Redux Saga, there is also this Redux Observable, which is kind of reactive programming for that. And I mean, if you got like any questions, that's a good time, because I mean, I can go through that code and I can show you a lot, but probably this is I mean, I just want to give you a taste why it's worth of giving a try. Yep.
Have you faced the problems when you're trying to expose some flexible object? For example, your functions should work with numbers and strings, and you need
two functions.
For example, you want to call, if it's a string, you want to call replace method, and that is why you should write my variable as string and so on.
I mean, they got this union type that something can be.
Yeah, but when you're trying to call the method that might be on one of this union type.
Yeah.
You should write this construction like
then, yeah, then you can use this is that, and then compiler, it should check if it's of that type that was passed. Then you got this if statement over there, and if this is, because is a keyword in TypeScript, so if is, and then you got the type, the name of the type, then inside the inferred type about the guy that was passed is what was this after this is.
Should it compile?
Yeah, it will compile. Yeah, this is exactly how that guy works, right? This payload here, depending on the action that is passed, because you see that action is just a Redux action here, so it can be like anything that got the type. Here, I know that I got a payload, and the payload is like of certain type, and the type here is string, just because I defined it here like a string. And if I say that's the set version second, then it says no. This is the payload is of the type full string. I'm not sure if I understood your question.
For example, when you're working with events, a lot of types. You have event, mouse, event, and so on. And you're trying to access event target, and you should write event target as HTML element, for example. It's a little tricky for me every time to type this. Because event target would be, for example, SVG, and it's not the HTML element. You are doing different in React, actually. Just for example.
I mean, with the event type, you got this generic guy that you are passing the element that was defined on. I mean, and as far as I know, then the event type on the tag, I mean on the HTML element, it's the type on the event type on that very element. It cannot be like on both, like on div and a button. It can be like just on the button. Is it correct? I mean.
Yeah, but you can try to add some event handler or button.
Okay, let's go for that. I mean, it seems to be interesting, at least for one person. Then that's already something. Okay, so let's go to some component. This super title seems to be pretty fine, and let's wrap it in the div guy here, and let's have it. Let's have a button here, and let's have on click on button. That would be something, and the button. And probably button needs some text to be rendered, so some button seems to be pretty easy. Some button. Yeah, and this on click, if you, is it on click? Yeah, it is mouse event handler, and the T here is just the generic guy of the mouse event handler, and you should probably pass here the button element, HTML button element, right? I'm not sure if I understand your question. Actually, I'm improvising. I mean, if you pass any function here, let's say f, well, that's a good, obviously good name for a function, and you got a function here, and it got this which is type of any, obviously, and say it again.
But you want to pass some exec.
Yeah. If you want to pass like exact interface, that would be the same guy as this. It's a probably then maybe this is the question of the design of the application. I would say if you want one function to do like several things and just to be like very generic but in a specific way, and you don't want to describe it as a type, or you just want to be, you know what I'm talking about. If you got like a generic function and you don't want to write a generic type for that, then probably you probably won't use any because you are not using advantage of types anyways. Yeah, it is a cheat. It is a cheat, but this is, I mean, how far as I understood you, this is what you want to do, right? I mean, you can say something like that could be string, or it could be number, or it could be whatever else, right? This is the union type. So if you got a handler for on click, which is that guy, so we can say React the guy, and React to be like very specific. It is HTML button probably, HTML element. Yeah, probably something like that. And this is like the very specific type of this event. But the thing is, if you want to be like such a, because if you're just writing a type annotation for that, it is good to know where to stop, and if you like really need it, because you don't have to type everything in your application. I mean, concerning types of your models, I would say just go 100% coverage. But if you consider like some external calls, I would say, okay, it's up to you. I mean, how safe you want to be, because you know that that you use that function here, and this is just a local function that you use only for on-click. Yeah, so obviously you can write something like that here, but if you write just any, because let's say it is just an any element here, then you can still use all those call target, is it? Target. Got no idea what's the, maybe that's the wrong type. Anyways, is it?
Because it's any, don't see the...
No, but it's supposed not to be any React mouse event. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I would just go for any here.
Sometimes it makes problems.
Yeah. The problem with the interaction with the HTML elements, I would say this is obviously not where the logic of your application is happening. I mean, obviously the logic of your application is happening in some services, not in those view layer of the application, right? So in React, probably you just want to pass some probes over there for all those on-click and the stuff. And obviously, if you want to write some just hacky code that you use a lot of on-clicks in the stuff, and then probably yeah, it can be. I mean, it can be the moment where you want to use any, because then you're gonna got mad because of writing all those like complicated HTML forms types, yeah, or whatever. That. Yeah, I would say so. Any other questions? So, thank you.